I couldn't, say it across the thing, but remember where you showed me where those tiny houses are going? All I could think was we need to look at that when all the houses are built, or mostly built, or even a couple of them, and look at what
Fred's not on yet.
that'll tell us rules about small lots, small parking, small everything. And then living in a camper trailer for a month.
Yeah, they're all over.
Oh,
Tell me about it. And I liked it.
I'm like, yeah, I was like, please stay at home, stay at home. And when you said we need to look at that, I was like, yes, wait,
All right. Text.
Talking about estates being a quarter of an acre.
Recording in progress.
I'm not following it.
Rico, where'd I go?
Brian, you ready?
He's not on yet.
Oh, okay.
We're waiting to get him on.
Press, he texted you on Zoom.
I had a laugh the entire time. I
Hey, I
tried
didn't
to laugh,
get
but he
Tammy
kept getting not
Thompson's
going.
mail for once. I got mine. Yay.
Okay, Fred is now on.
All right. Anyone ready on your end?
Yes.
Okay. Ready on the left? Ready on the right? Hey, Fred, you might want to mute your microphone again. Good evening, everybody. And
I thought we were going to say the pledge.
we haven't started yet. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regularly scheduled City Council meeting for December 6, 2022. My name is Mark Clark, the mayor. I'll call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Clark,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Castle,
Here.
Councilmember Spear,
Here.
Councilmember Johnson,
Present.
Councilmember Neal,
Present.
Councilmember
Virtually.
Mortensen,
Here.
and Councilmember Providence.
Here.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, we have a proclamation for Wreaths Across America. And I'll go ahead and read this out. All right, whereas Wreaths Across America story began over 30 years ago when the Worcester Wreath Company from Harrington, Maine, started the tradition of placing wreaths on the headstones of our nation's fallen heroes at Arlington National Cemetery during the holidays. And whereas the National Wreaths Across America mission is to remember the fallen, honor those who served, and teach our children the value of freedom. And whereas the mission is symbolized by laying holiday wreaths on the graves of our fallen heroes on the third Saturday of December each year, and whereas the National Wreaths Across America program honored over 2 million veterans in over 3,400 locations in 2021 by placing wreaths in cemeteries in all 50 U.S. states and abroad. And whereas the City of Evans would like to express its gratitude to the numerous community organizations and volunteers that have helped honor all 193 veterans in the Evans Cemetery. And whereas the City of Evans would like to give a special thanks to the members of the Exchange Club of Greeley, the auxiliary from the Evans BFW Post Adams Worth BFW number 6624, and the Evans Boy Scouts Troop 4 for donating their time and money to honor all of the veterans in the Evans Cemetery. And whereas Wreaths Across America's program in Evans is an outstanding honor to the city's fallen heroes, and the city is committed to partnering with these organizations in the future to continue honoring our veterans every holiday season. And whereas Evans residents owe a deep debt of gratitude to all those who have served and are serving and will serve our nation's armed forces. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mark Clark, Mayor of Evans, Colorado, do hereby proclaim the third Saturday of December as Wreaths Across America in Evans, and witness whereunto I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Evans this 6th day of December 2022. And I know we have our friends from Wreaths Across America, and if there's anybody else that'd like to come up and join, that would be great. We'll get a picture. And I know this also is for veterans as well, so Curtis, if you wouldn't mind coming up here because you're a veteran.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, and I appreciate the proclamation, and I hope that people will come out on December 17th at 10 o'clock and help us honor our veterans, and I think we're ready to go. Just waiting for the word that the truck is on its way with our wreaths. That's the main thing that I'm waiting for right now, but everything else is ready, so
Fantastic.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you on the 17th. Right. Next item on the agenda, audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address City Council on any item that is not on the agenda or of a public hearing? If so, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening, Council. My name is Steve Teets in Greeley, and I'm very sad in many ways, especially the homeless, is that I got here two posters, and I'll give to you. One says, "We didn't choose to be on the edge of homelessness," and this is two people that have jobs, full-time jobs, and they're close to homelessness. This one, it says, "Homeless found me." It was a child. And also, I was at a board meeting of the District 6, and the superintendent said 70% of the families are under the poverty level. Also, I got here from the Greeley Tribune an editorial. And the editorial was by Sean Wolcott, who is the United Way County Director of Household Stability, which we don't have too much here. I also like to know, because about a month ago, I gave you some information from the United Way, Wells Way Home. Did you have a chance to read it? And sometime I'd like to have a response to what you think of it. And also, a few months ago, I gave you something about transportation or regional transportation, and I'd like to have a response on that, if possible. I would appreciate it very much. Also, on the homeless, that the County Commissioner, City of Greeley, went down to Colorado Springs along with Sean and 3 or 4 other people about their mission. And I didn't bring the information with me, but with the way they have that set up is really more of a person-oriented, and it helps eventually, hopefully, get steady housing. I guess that's about it, all I have, but I'm just very sad. I did hear you when I first came in your work session about housing as well. It's a big problem, and there's people out there that in the cold, and it's just sad. We're the richest country in this world, and yet we got so many homeless people. Thank you.
All right, is there anybody else in the audience that likes to address City Council on any item that is not on the agenda or a public hearing? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the next item on our agenda. It's approval of agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
All right.
I move to approve the agenda. I second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, consent agenda. Item number 2, approval of the November 15, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. And item number 3, consideration of ordinance number 783-22, an application to zone parcels of land known as the Adiano property east of Brantner Road and west of West Service Road to 85 RCR. Second reading.
I move to approve the consent agenda. I second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye. Aye, sorry.
All right,
It,
you're good.
it keeps messing up on me when I try to.
It's all good, Fred. All right, next item, old business, item number 4, public hearing, consideration of ordinance number 782-22, adopting reference of the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, second reading. I will open the public hearing, hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is second reading and also public hearing for this proposed amendment to the municipal code, adopting by reference the International Energy Conservation Code, the 2018 version. Heather Utrata, our building technician, is here. She gave a full presentation at the last meeting and prepared with some summary comments and then prepared for council action and questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much and good evening. Mayor Clark and members of council, thank you for your time tonight for the second reading and public hearing for the proposed adoption of a new energy code. If you'll recall, on November 15th, we did discuss a new House bill that the state has set forth with some stricter standards for the energy code and some deadlines to achieve those standards. Staff is proposing to update our version of the code before that first deadline to allow us some flexibility and choose what's right for Evans. Based on some research and some recommendation from the development community, staff is proposing to adopt the 2018 version of the energy code, and no changes have been made to our proposal.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Councilmember Neal, do you have any questions?
Nope.
All right, thank you. All right, because this is a public hearing, I'd ask anybody in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item to please come up to the podium. State your name, address. Seeing none. Anybody online? All right, I will close the public hearing. Any comments of council? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number
hold on.
782.
I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I wasn't sure if this was brought up. So should I recuse myself?
You weren't here. I was waiting for it.
So as long as you review the materials that are in the packet, you can go ahead and participate.
Okay, perfect.
You were here for all the public hearing. There wasn't any. So you've seen the materials. You were here for the public hearings. You can participate.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, we're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, I move to approve ordinance number 782-22 on second reading.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve ordinance number 782-22 on second reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, old business, item number 5, public hearing, consideration of continuance request for resolution number 19-2022 for bunting disposal, special use permit from December 6, 2022 to January 17th, 2023. I will open the public hearing and we'll hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a request for continuance of that resolution number 19-2022 in order for the developer to finalize the development agreement so that we can then bring you the development agreement along with the special use permit concurrently at your January 17th meeting.
Okay. Any questions of staff and council? Okay, because it's a public hearing, I would ask anybody in the audience that wishes to come up and speak in favor or against this item, please come up to the podium. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any council discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the applicant's request for a continuance of the public hearing to consider resolution number 19-2022 to be heard by City Council on January 17th, 2023. I second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the applicant's request for a continuance of the public hearing to consider resolution number 19-2022 to be heard by the City Council on January 17th, 2023. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Moving on, new business, item number 6, public hearing, consideration of ordinance number 787-22 to amend several sections of Title 18 of the City of Evans Municipal Code to add definitions regarding uses associated with the oil and gas industry and to add setback requirements for land use activities in relationship to existing oil and gas facilities. On the first reading, I will open the public hearing. We'll hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, as you recall, back in April, You adopted 1041 regulations for the city of Evans, establishing the city limits, everything within the city limits as an area of state interest, and oil and gas activities as an activity of state interest. And as part of that, there was an adoption of an intergovernmental agreement with Weld County to jointly investigate and process land use applications, development applications for oil and gas. That process sets oil and gas setbacks from development. The piece of that that is coming to you this evening is what was referred to as reverse setbacks, developments setback from existing or plugged and abandoned oil and gas facilities. So we do have the existing setbacks, but this is to establish reverse setbacks. So in other words, how close can development come to existing or plugged and abandoned facilities? I'll turn this over to our community development team to further discuss this. We do have staff members from Weld County here as well, and we'll proceed that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reedy, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. What you see on the slide right now is the proposed some comparisons. At the top, this is existing code, new oil and gas development from existing development. So this is when oil and gas companies go into a community and development is around it in that area. Right now, new oil and gas development can't be closer than 500 feet or obtain a waiver from the hearing officer with Weld County going in near development. And again, we adopted the same code that Weld County adopted, their 1041 regs, so we're equal to them on this particular case. New development from existing oil and gas. So oftentimes you'll hear that referred to as a reverse setback because it's looking at development in reverse. You have oil and gas, and then you might have development that wants to come into that oil and gas setback area. Right now, the city code has been silent. It doesn't have any setback requirements from development coming towards oil and gas. Weld County has a variety of different types of setbacks. And you can see on the slide here anywhere from 200 feet to 150 to 350 feet. It was confusing to regulate all of those different types of setbacks. So Weld County is just going to go to a flat 250. And Angela happened to be a staff member there when they were talking about some of that. So we can ask Angela, and we also have a guest that will also explain some of Weld County's thinking behind that decision. What is being proposed is new oil and gas from existing development. No changes proposed in our code. No changes being proposed in the Weld County Code. What is being proposed is new development from existing oil and gas. Staff is recommending 50 feet from plugged and abandoned. Staff did take to Planning Commission 250, and Planning Commission voted on 500. Weld County is saying 50 from plugged and abandoned, which is consistent with what Planning Commission is recommending, and 250 from any oil and gas facility. So that's development coming towards oil and gas. We're not making any change for the oil and gas to be set back when it's new oil and gas coming into existing development area. And with that, then I believe I'm going to turn it over to Angela. Here's my germy thing. You can have that. It's okay. I'll use hand sanitizer.
Okay, so this map shows the different proposals and what they would look like for the city of Evans. So what you see on this map, the tiny little purple circles are the plugged and abandoned wells within the city limits. The colored dots are the active wells. So there's only two, I think, of the light blue. Those are dry and abandoned, but they still count because they haven't been officially plugged and abandoned according to industry standards. so we still use the same setback. Orange is drilling, red is producing, and then the bluish purple ones are shut in. Again, not being used, but they do have the potential to be reopened. I noticed within the last year, the city of Evans had 3 shut-in wells that are now producing.
And so the bigger
Formerly.
circle means what, and then the smaller circle?
Yeah, so that's what you see here, and then the green are the temporarily abandoned. So the smaller colored circle here, if I show you like a closer up view here, so the little circle would be the distance from a plugged-in abandoned well. The bigger circle is the 250 feet, and then the grayish circle around the outside is 500 feet. So here are just some different places around town and what those different impacts would be of whether we do a 250 or a 500 feet. Thankfully, most of our producing wells are outside of the more urban areas, so that's helpful. On the west side of town, where we're expecting more development, we do have more producing wells or wells that have the potential to be producing. And you can see the impact there. And then out here at the very west side by Two Rivers Parkway. Okay, let's see. And then the southern part down by the river, of course, lots more there, but then also not convenient for development. Just so you understand, or at least kind of the things that Weld County was considering when they went with the 250 setback, instead of their more varied approach that they had traditionally had, they did look at this, was how much acreage they're taking out of out of use for development. So in most zones in Weld County, they were using 150 feet. And if you'll notice, some of our developments here in Evans, like Prairie View, has 150-foot circles in the middle, so it kind of looks like a cassette tape deck. And with the circles being 150 feet. So that's 1.62 acres for that circle, and then a 250-foot circle is 4.5 acres. 330 is in here for another reason. Well, when we have our person come from Weld County, is just under 8 acres, and then a 500-foot circle is 18 acres. And while the acreage doesn't matter if it's a life safety issue, it is something to consider if you don't think that there is a danger there. And there are varying opinions about that, and that's why we have an expert here. So I hope that helps.
So, again, the Planning Commission heard this, and they are sending to you 50 feet from plugged and abandoned, and 500 feet for new development coming in. And that's what is being presented to you this evening. Staff can answer any questions that you may have. I know we do have an outside guest who would like to make a presentation to explain a little bit more the science behind the decision that's being made in Weld County. And then when it comes to the appropriate time, I do have some public testimony that was received yesterday and today about this in a printout for you.
Great, thank you.
And that concludes staff's comments.
Awesome, thank you. And if you want to have whoever's here from Weld County that'd like to come up and.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Dave Burns, Senior Emergency Management Coordinator with the Weld County Office of Emergency Management. I was here to present with the Planning Commission of kind of how we set up our buffer zones. So one of my primary duties with the Office of Emergency Management is I approve all the emergency action plans for all new existing oil and gas facilities. And so with that, we have what's called the 250-foot zone, which is the hot zone, hazmat world. And then we got our 500-foot zone, which is the warm zone. and then our cold zone, which is at 1,000 feet. So kind of how we came up with those three zones is one, is a book called the Emergency Response Guide, ERG. That's a national standard for first responders, kind of a big umbrella of not exactly quite sure what we're responding into, but kind of gives us a good perimeter. And for the methane, which is one of the major products within oil and gas, that ERG is at 300 feet, 330 feet, right around there. So that's one. Number two is a modeling program that we use called Aloha, which is part of the Cameo suite put on by EPA and the National Weather Service, where we can actually go in and put in the methane, the wind directions, the lat and long, and that actually drills it down to the initial isolation zone at about 140 feet. So we went from 300 feet from just broad to actual plume modeling to 140 feet. So that's two. Our final one is real life information, right? So in the presentation I did was in April of 2016, actually when I was the emergency manager here for the city of Evans. There was a tank battery that got struck by lightning, or it was a human. I can't remember right now which one it was, but it caught on fire. There's actually pictures in the Greeley Tribune of the tank battery flying through. You've probably seen that one, flying through the air. What's interesting is that tank battery actually landed at 250 feet. So between the ERGs and the plume modeling, that's where we came up with 250 feet, along with other case studies as well too. So that's our baseline. Anything that comes in for permitting, we don't let anybody build within 250 feet of that, because that's considered a hot zone. For firefighters and stuff like that, that is our hot zone, so we can't enter that area without proper PPE and SCBAs, self-contained breathing apparatus, that kind of stuff. Our 500 foot is really no PPEs really required, but we're going into the hot zone, so it's kind of that transition, that corridor from the cold zone to the hot zone. So that's kind of how we come up with the 250, 500 feet, and 1,000 feet. So with that, if you guys have any questions regarding the isolation zones, I'm happy to help with that.
All right, great, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. You mentioned methane gas. Is it under a 24-hour sensor measuring these gases? Excuse me.
So,
what kind of systems do you have to monitor the gases, sir?
Yeah, so, sorry. So we have four gases is one of them. It's a four gas and ranges all the different types of chemicals out there. A lot of the firefighters also carry a air monitoring equipment that is picks up the benzene as well, which is another byproduct is too as well. Plus, a lot of the perimeters have air monitoring that picks up the methane and all the chemicals that are coming out from the facilities.
Is that monitored 24 hours? Do you have like alarm sensors to notify
Some facilities do have that. It all depends upon what that requirement is for that size of facility. And
Okay.
all that is based out of the oil and gas department on that side of that.
All right, one more question. The fire response department, are they equipped to handle any type of disasters, short notice disasters for these things?
So all the fire departments within Colorado are all hazards. So,
I mean, within that particular area.
yes,
Are they
so
equipped?
for Colorado, for like the city of Evans, not talking for them specifically, but all firefighters are minimum hazmat operations certified. So they're able to go in and do the initial attacks. We do also have the Greeley Regional Hazmat Team that is within just a close proximity. Plus, we have additional hazmat teams in the southern part of the county and the Boulder County Hazmat Authority that responds into Weld County.
Councilmember Neal, do you have any questions for staff or the presenter?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So you know that little, I think Ann must have mentioned, but the little small, I don't know, they look like burgundy-ish dots. Those are they're actually abandoned, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
they're the ones that have been officially plugged and
Officially banned.
abandoned.
And around those, do we also have the same kind of standards for those as the ones that are in essence active or potentially active?
In regards to my presentation,
Yes.
no.
Okay. And
So
how about,
those are capped off. A lot of those are not producing anything. Some of them, depending upon the stand, just have concrete on top of them. So there's no product or gases coming out of them.
and my next follow-up question was, is there anything to monitor any of the gases or that can potentially still seek out? Okay.
There's no active air monitoring going around those at this current time that I'm aware of.
Any other go
I
ahead.
have one quick question. I read the report and you did mention 300 to 330 feet. Is that set for any of the government agencies? Because the way I read it in our thing said that that was what the federal government suggests.
Right.
Is that correct?
So that's the emergency response guide, the ERG,
Okay.
which is produced by the Department of Transportation.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other additional questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm getting a little bit confused amongst the numbers here. So Weld County setback is 250 feet?
They are taking it to the final reading on the 21st.
Right, but to go to 250.
For existing oil and gas facilities, 50 from a plugged and abandoned wellhead.
And we're saying 500 for existing, is that?
No, the planning commission.
50 for plugged
Oh,
and
the planning
abandoned.
commission said that. Okay, that's where I was getting confused. So they said that, but we're looking at matching or mirroring Weld County.
It's your decision to make.
Right.
Staff made a presentation to planning commission. They made a different decision, and that's what now we present to you. But council can make a decision that mirrors Weld County, or council can make it another decision.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. That
Any other
answers my question.
I just have one more question for my probably staff. Within that 50 foot, when we say 50 foot on a non-producing well, are they being marked somehow?
Yes, by the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and they have to mark them, but they're not just non-producing wells. They have to be plugged by regulation and officially abandoned.
Okay, and those are being on the surface marked? Okay, so if I were to purchase a home and it was built within that 50 foot, that I would know that I was 50 foot by looking out my back door, I could see that there's a marker saying I'm 60 foot away.
If you look at that map, there's one plugged one where there's a subdivision.
Yeah, I'm asking though if there's marker specifically.
So the officially plugged and abandoned ones, the ones where we feel comfortable enough reducing that setback to 50 feet, are all marked and plugged according to the COGCC standards. So that's why we feel like it's okay. But the ones that you see on here, that actually we don't have too many. They plugged and abandoned a lot last year. I had to update my map with new data. But let's say that, there's a purple one up there. That, in some parts of the county, is just a well they stopped using. And in some of it's marked on this map, which means somebody knows where it is, but it might not be marked in the field.
So, if you guys aren't working here anymore, and 20 years from now, they decide that they're gonna build a housing subdivision, and it comes up onto this, they have no idea that there's an abandoned well underneath then. That one is above ground, you can see it. But if it was capped and...
If it was like a very old well that was capped and not marked, it's possible if a bunch of staff didn't do their due diligence and the applicant didn't do their due diligence, but our application requirements require that they talk to the oil and gas people, you know, who own the mineral rights, the operators, and if in the best cases that they already have surface use agreements in place, and we require that the design of subdivisions match that surface use agreement, and the operator should know where their wells are, even if they don't look like it on the ground. And the CUGCC sure knows they're showing up on this map, and so that would for sure show up in their title work at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I do actually have a question. So with this information, are there any other municipalities within Will County that are considering adopting the proposed Will County?
Many communities in Weld County have these reverse setbacks. Okay. Some municipalities from plugged and abandoned go up to 100 feet. Some go down to 25 feet. We wanted to adopt in step with Weld County, since we have that intergovernmental agreement with Weld County to manage our 1041 process with them. So these are after review, this is what staff presented to Planning Commission as being consistent with Weld.
Is there any other additional questions for staff? Seeing none. Because this is a public hearing, I would ask anybody in the audience that wishes to come up and speak in favor or against this, please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Mr. Mayor, I do have public testimony here.
Okay, have those, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Information provided to you just now contains email from PDC Energy, from Bessler Development, and from the Walton Group. And then also attached is a memo that provides you with 3 alternative motions. 2 are already in your packet, and 1 is one to consider should you want to amend the packet.
Thank you. And while council's reviewing it, if they are not, I'll ask again if there's anybody for or against this, come up to the podium. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and any comments from council for discussion? I can tell you, I actually am in favor of aligning our policies to what Will County is recommending. I believe because of our intergovernmental agreement, it makes it a lot easier for us and developers and those who want to come into Evans to do business, that the standards are kind of universal. I think with the presentation that was presented, you know, the information about the setbacks, the blast zones, and those that can, you know, how that can be mitigated, I think is suffice information for me. So.
I would agree with that.
Councilmember Neal, do you have any comments?
Yes, Mark. Since I am not privy to the information just handed out, I feel uncomfortable voting on this issue, so I will abstain from voting on it.
Okay.
And I would appreciate getting the information put in my box at the city.
Does Mr. Neal have any comments, though?
He said no.
I know, he just said he didn't feel comfortable voting, but I didn't know if he had any comments.
That was his only comment, yeah, so. Anybody else have any comments?
So if we're recommending the setbacks as they are, which motion do we need to read here?
The amended motion. If you're wanting to go with the 50 and the 250, you would read the amended motion.
Or if you want to go with what's proposed, the 50 and the 500.
No.
So if you want to go with the 250, it would be this one on your.
Okay. I move to recommend approval of ordinance number 787-221 on first reading with the following amendments as discussed. The setback from existing oil and gas facilities shall be 250 feet.
Is this 221 or 222 or 22?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Is this ordinance number, or -221 or -22?
22.
It's 22.
Okay,
We have an
so
extra one.
with that amendment, 787-22.
I'll second it. A motion and a second to recommend approval of ordinance number 787-22 on first reading with the following amendments as discussed. The setbacks from existing oil and gas facilities to 250 feet. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on. Item number 7, new business. Public hearing, consideration of resolution number 43-2022 to replat a parcel of land and create right-of-way for the extension of Southgate Drive south of 31st Street to West Service Road. I will open up the public hearing and we'll hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this particular proposal relates to the redevelopment of the Evans Redevelopment Agency-owned property that's on the southwest corner of US 85 and 31st Street. This particular replat would create the right-of-way to perform the service of extending Southgate Drive through this property and replat the property accordingly. I'll turn this over to Ann Beth Johnson for further description of the replat.
Thank you, Mr. Reedy, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. This is Resolution 43-2022 for the final plat. The reason why this is a replat, many replats are administratively approved, but because this is vacating some easements, it's also platting a street, it does need to come before you. So the site again is located west of West Service Road or US 85, south of 31st Avenue. This is the ERA parcel. It is currently vacant. There is a process that everybody goes through. This slide illustrates a process for that replat application following the major replat process, which is in 1807-120D. There is an extensive pre-application process, then the application review process. There's public notice process and public hearings as well. This is the plat. As you can see, the street would come down and connect to West Service Road right here. This area eventually will be vacated and it will be utilized for stormwater management. It is being created, there will be 4 lots created. This is lot 1, and we actually have a land use application in for the resulting lot 1. We have a pending land use application that wants to come in on the resulting lot 2. And we potentially have another land use application that's going to be coming in, I believe, in this lot right here. This then will remain open, and I know you've been talking with Economic Development Manager Allison Moding regarding potential use of the residual property. So 4 lots, a street. And the criteria for approval, it is quite lengthy, but again, a lot of the criteria for approval that's listed on this slide really is done through the site-specific development process. Things like adverse effect on the natural beauty. The resulting property will be served by water, public sanitary sewer, All of those items are reviewed during the referral and the internal review process for this particular replatting of the land. However, a lot of the criteria will be addressed because we're not doing a site-specific development plan as part of this proposal. We're just drawing lines on the map. This is going to come and will be reviewed when those lots are individually developed as well. So again, one is under review. The other one is pending submittal. So at this point in time, that concludes staff's presentation, and I am available to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Neal, do you have any questions for staff?
Nope, sounds good, get it going.
Anybody from council have any questions of staff?
I have none.
Right. Because it's a public hearing, I'd ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to come up and speak in favor of this or against this, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I would entertain any council discussion. Anybody has any? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Upon review of the criteria for approval found in Title 18 of the Municipal Code and staff's findings contained in this staff report, I move to approve resolution number 43-2022 for the major replat associated with the Evans Renewal Authority property located at the southwest corner of US 85 and 31st Street.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 43-2022 for the major replat associated with the Evans Renewal Authority property located at the southwest corner of US 85 and 31st Street. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next item, another public hearing. Consideration of resolution number 32-2022 to approve a variance to increase maximum height from 60 feet to 135 feet for a property located west and adjacent to 47th Avenue, which is Wall County Road 33, and south of the Union Pacific Railroad Mountain Cement property. And we will open the public hearing and we'll hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and council members, as you know, earlier this year, you annexed and zoned this property known as the Mountain Cement property west of 47th Avenue, south of the Union Pacific Railroad on the south side of the river. The property owner is now desiring to move forward with plans to develop this property into a cement transloading facility. It has the request before you for you to consider a variance to increase the maximum height on this property from the 60 feet currently allowed in the zone district to 135 feet for this property. We do have Angela Snyder, our senior city planner, here to discuss this further. I know the applicant has a presentation as well.
Angela Snyder, Community Development. The applicant, Eagle Materials, has asked for a variance to the height limitation to be able to build up to 135 feet in the I-3 zone district. And the current limit there right now is 60 feet. As stated, the property was recently annexed and the property was zoned I-3. The city has not yet received a land use application, and the applicant has expressed that they would like to know the outcome of the variance request prior to submitting. However, the applicant has a nice presentation in which they'll show you a rendering of the concrete storage that they are hoping to permit in the city should this variance request be approved. It's okay. My presentation isn't working, so I'll just talk it through a little bit. And I know that, oh, there it is. Yay. Okay. Okay. So here is that artist rendering. The applicant has even better pictures of it, so I'll just keep going. There are two other structures in the area or properties that are allowed to exceed the 60 feet. One is a variance that the City of Evans approved on the neighboring property. That variance was to go up to 179 feet. And that was granted to the Mountain Tracks development. And on the bottom left is a grain elevator, which has 130 feet tanks. So the pictures of that will be really great for knowing what this will be. The top of that grain elevator does go to 221. So you can see there that that actually is 221, so I'll just skip. So here we have the process flow section. You can tell that we do follow the process, and all the dates on here show that we provided notice as required, and that this was heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they have recommended that you approve the variance. There are 4 criteria for approval of a variance. I have them all in their full text here, but then I have paraphrased them for your benefit on this slide. For A, the Planning Commission found that the request will not jeopardize the health, safety, or welfare. For B, the Planning Commission agreed with staff that strict adherence to the height limitation would unnecessarily restrict the industrial use of the property, which is in an area ideally suited for transloading operations that often require taller structures. C, unnecessary hardship, not inconvenience. The site is uniquely useful because of proximity to rail. The length and width of the property are ideal for transloading and proximity to the market. There are other transloading facilities in the area, and not being able to use the property adjacent to the rail for a rail-dependent use could be considered an unnecessary hardship, not simply an inconvenience. And then lastly, practical difficulty was not self-imposed unreasonably. Again, unreasonably is key here. The applicant bought the property for the transloading use, and because of our intergovernmental agreement with the county, the development came into the Evans jurisdiction. The county didn't have a height limit, but the city does. The Planning Commission agreed with staff that the enforcement of the height limitation would create an unnecessary hardship. Therefore, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the variance request. The applicant is present, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. And I understand the applicant is here to provide a presentation, and we'll have the applicant come up and their presentation, please.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. Edward Williams, Eagle Materials, the parent company to Mountain Cement out of Dallas, Texas. Seen you all before. Appreciate the time to make this presentation. Appreciate the hard work of staff to put this together. I've started my presentation. If you go to the next slide, you want me to use that, or you'll do it? Okay, it's fine. I parroted the exact same thing that you just saw. I appreciate the summary that was given, and I think that as we go through the presentation, you'll see that we've met the criteria that are outlined in this document. So just to bring you up to speed on what it is that we're planning to build, you can see that we have a rail unloading building, a closed structure where the rail cars are going to be parked while they're unloading the material below the rail car, and then it's going to be pneumatically conveyed up to the silos, to the top of the silos where a pipe will take it into the silo, and the dedusting unit will evacuate the air. Beneath each one of those silos, there are truck lanes with scales where the trucks will enter the silo and they'll get filled up, wait on the scale, get their bill of lading tickets, and exit the facility. And then you can see we also have a proposed office and small control room building on the property as well. This is kind of a cutaway look, so it shows, most importantly here for this discussion, the silos themselves are not full structures all the way to the ground. That's a support structure. That's an outer skin. Inside that outer skin, there's the storage capacity of the silo, plus the hopper beneath that storage capacity. And that hopper is very, very critical in its angle so that the material will flow out when you open the gate and let it go into the truck. Again, this is the rendering. It shows where the silos are located on the property, close to the railroad tracks, central on the land itself so that we can bring the rail cars in and have them push past the unloading area. But where that's important from a height perspective is, of course, the further you are from the road or the further you are from adjacent properties, the smaller that height variance looks. The smaller the height of those silos look. They're easier to mask, and they're less intrusive to your, shading somebody else's property. Second view, look in the other direction. You can see the railroad there on the northern boundary. There is quite a bit of an elevation differential there between that railroad line and some of the roadways around that. That's going to provide a natural berm. It's going to keep you from seeing a lot of the operation. So, similarly to what was said earlier, we did go around and take a look at what are the other facilities around the area that surround this piece of property that might exceed that 60-foot limitation. It's been mentioned about the Five Rivers facility there to the west. As was mentioned, the grain elevator itself is 221 feet. The silos are somewhat smaller. It's certainly a noticeable landmark as you're driving in because the terrain is relatively flat all around there. Adjacent to us to our proposed property across County Road 33 is the Mountain Tracks facility. That's been approved for a very similar system to what we're talking about doing, although they were doing it with frac sand, but it's a offloading rail cars into silos and having it exit by trucks, and they have been given a 179-foot variance, although they have yet to build that. So I also took the liberty of using some of the tools at our disposal to show scale views of what our facility might look like from a couple different street locations. So if you can see on the upper right side there, that's the overview with little pins setting where you might be positioned in your vehicle looking out across the property. So at the very top, you're on County Road 33 to the south, looking back across the property, and you can see the picture, the rendering showing that you can see the tops of those silos, very small in the distance. Again, working your way around, that lower left side picture is going to be blocked a lot by the railroad berm, as is that middle lower picture. That's the differential between the railroad height and the roads around there. You can even see in that middle picture, you can just barely see the tops of the silos. And then going all the way over to the west side of the property, kind of looking back from a roadway over there, you can see it's kind of lost in the clouds, but we feel like it's not overly intrusive. And again, the idea that the silos are kind of the way the terminals are designed, the silos have to be all close together. Even though you have 4 silos there, it kind of gives the appearance of one when you're talking about from a distance. So. There was also some comments about nighttime lighting. How's it going to affect us? So the picture facilities that you see there in the upper 2 photographs are pictures of a facility that I helped construct in Iowa that included a dome and silos next to it, and a railroad unloading facility there to the left of the silos. Very similar to what we're talking about building here, except for the dome part, which is additional storage. But most importantly for this, we wanted to show how the street lights guiding the traffic around the property, as well as the lights on the equipment itself, are downward facing LEDs. We do light studies. We make sure that light is not leaving the property. And you can see it's very focused around there. Additionally, I would say if these pictures were during the day, you'd see that the property around our facility is also very nice. We take good care of the land around it. It's not going to be full of equipment and everything else. And that lower picture was another facility that's showing one of the light studies that we conducted on a facility we were proposing in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We haven't built that one, but during the process, we went ahead and went through all the engineering required to make sure that we were in compliance with the city on the lighting. So most importantly, something that's probably on your minds is, well, why did you propose this? Why do you need a height variance, and are there any alternatives? So again, the why the silos. One of the biggest advantages, not just for us, but for anybody, whether it's agriculture or some other mineral, is that when you elevate the material into a silo, either by elevator or in our case pneumatically, you gain the ability to unload it with gravity as opposed to providing more equipment, using more power, etc. Multiple silos gives us the possibility of having multiple different products. We do have a couple products planned here, not just ordinary Portland cement, but we also have a slag cement and a pozzolan product, which is also cementitious adder. It helps with environmental aspect of cement, because you can substitute other materials in with this cement that doesn't have the same process from a CO2 perspective. Silos provide a sealed system for control of moisture and the dust. It's not going to be some sort of an open building where you're going to have to drive into it and load it up with a front end loader and move it over to a hopper and have, as you can imagine, how that dust would get airborne. The sizes of the silos are always chosen so that we can model our business with the time that it takes to unload rail cars, to get new rail cars delivered, and to handle the daily sales, bridging the gap in between each one of those deliveries and events. And then finally, the bottom statement there, the proper integration of storage for scale to truck loading. It's very common in not just our industry, as I said, but other industries as well. Having a truck drive through a silo, get on a scale, and be loaded directly. So some of the other methods that may be on your mind, horizontal flat storage, I mentioned, it would be a large warehouse where you might drive some sort of equipment in there to pick up material, but you can't. With powder, you obviously have to reclaim it somehow. So it would have to be some sort of a system under there, and that would be a very complex system of various holes in the ground and conveyor belts. Just not economically feasible, and it would be a dusty and hard to permit nightmare for cement. As well as having the open storage, you'd have contaminants getting in your cement. You'd run the risk of having customer complaints or even building failures if you had impurities and other tramp metal and things like this getting into your product before you ship it out. The footprint for flat storage is much larger than what we're talking about. You saw on the property the actual physical space required for the terminal is very small because of the vertical storage. If it was a large flat storage facility, it would take up a lot more square footage on the property itself. What about larger diameters but shorter? That might work for liquids, but it doesn't work for powders, because the further you expand the diameter of the silo, the more shallow your bottom is going to be, and the material just won't flow. There are, you saw the dome in there. There's a potential to have a dome with a completely aerated bottom, but at that point you're talking about very large storage and very expensive as well. Multiple smaller or shorter silos. I think that that's kind of like saying, well, if I didn't want this big car to haul my family around, I might want to get 6 small cars and haul them. Everybody hauls themselves. It's more expense, it's more equipment, it's more maintenance, it's more potential for failure, mistakes, etc. And it's just not practical in the industry. That's why you don't see that sort of a solution out there. So finally, in conclusion, I think that we're showing as best I can that the system that we've proposed is the one that best meets the needs for Mountain Cement for the terminal here. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I would like to take an opportunity to thank your staff as they guided us through this process. It's always difficult to do this from out of town, but good communication and a good, strong knowledge of the process.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Neal, do you have any questions for staff or the applicant?
No, I don't.
All right, thank you. Any questions of the applicant and or staff by council?
I have a small question, sir. Once the silos are operational during normal operations, what is the max volume capacity of the silo, sir?
We have 4 silos on the property, 2 of each size. 2 of them, we usually calculate them by tons for the material that's inside, because that's basically how you run through your process. So we have 2 3,000-ton silos and 2, I believe, 1,200-ton silos proposed in the drawings. They happen to be the same size height-wise. The smaller volumes are going to be smaller diameters. We're still refining exactly what those numbers are, but we would stay within that height variance.
Okay.
And they're size-based. The reason that the smaller silos are for the products that aren't being utilized as much as the Portland cement. So there's no sense building extra space and having the material sit there.
All right, that's the second question, the metric tons, but since it's not varies, I that's just information eager to know for myself, so.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Vance.
Any other additional questions? Councilmember Seer?
Yeah, I'm,
I can see it, yeah.
a 60-foot silo, and what are we looking for? 100 and, what's, yeah. So what's the difference then in particles in the air from loading this thing then between the 60-foot and the larger one? I mean, are we gonna be?
The requirements for the air permit for the silos are gonna be the same no matter what. The filter media that's in the dust collection system is going to be the same. It's going to be governed by the EPA, and I believe it's 0.08 grains per standard cubic foot of air, which is the accepted limit, I guess, nationwide right now for.
So if I'm walking by on the road, not that I would be, but if someone was riding their bike or whatever alongside the road and you guys are loading, then they're not going to have any fear of inhaling any of dust particles or whatever from loading the cement.
From loading the cement, I can say, no, you won't have any fear. Now,
okay.
Now, whether you might have some wind blowing in the area that's going to blow up the rest of Colorado, I have no idea.
Right.
But yeah, we have dust collection system on the actual loading. On my computer, I have a video of the unloading, but I didn't bring my computer tonight.
Okay.
And it was too big of a file to send to staff. But you can see that the inside the area under the silo where the truck pulls in, we have a telescoping spout. So the truck drives in, the spout comes down, seats with the top of the trailer. I think if you scan through just a few more, I may have eliminated that slide because we never look at it. But it seats with the top of the trailer. Then a dust collection system starts up, so it actually becomes negative. Then the material falls in, and the massive amounts of dust fall into the truck, and then around the outer edge, or outer perimeter of that tube, the air brings the airborne dust back up to the dust collection system.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other additional questions? Seeing none, okay, because of the public hearing, I'd invite anybody up for the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none.
You done with me?
Yep,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
I will close the public hearing. Are there any comments from staff or from council? If not, I'd entertain a motion. He answered all of my questions and concerns. I think this is a good, I'm in favor of it.
Agreed. Well, and with giving the variance to another property nearby, I don't see a reason to not grant the request.
Right.
Not only that, it's structural. It's structural, like it's mentioned, so.
Right.
I
Smaller
see-
footprint.
Exactly.
Based on the recommendation of the Board of Zoning Appeals, the reports of staff, and the testimony here given, I find that the application meets the review criteria for a variance. I move to approve resolution number 32-2022.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 32-2022. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
And I did have a comment, Mark, but that's okay.
Sorry. Sorry, Fred.
I'll get you.
I'm sure you will. All right, moving on. Item number 9. Consideration of 37th Street widening Phase 2 right-of-way acquisition, and we will hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, as you know, the design for Phase 2, 37th Street widening, is now complete, and this is the next to the last property acquisition that's necessary for that parcel. Our city engineer is here to describe this acquisition for you and propose your consideration of the acquisition itself.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Yeah, as Randy said, we're down to the last 2. We just got the last agreement for the next one yesterday, so it'll come to council at the next meeting. But this is for property on the south side of 37th Street. It's currently owned by Liberty Farm Ground LLC, also known as Basler Homes. And it's a piece of right-of-way along the south side to construct the Phase 2B of the road when we get that far east. The agreed-upon price is $16,850 plus closing cost. As you know, we had about $1.5 million budgeted for this originally, and currently with this final expenditure, or this one more expenditure, we would still have about $470,000 less closing costs in the budget for a right-of-way acquisition for this project. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for staff? Councilmember Neal?
Mark, will that, the remainder that's in that budget for the Phase 2, will that be rolled over into Phase 3?
That's a budget question we'd have to look into for the, in 2020, as a budget revision in 2023. But yeah, it could be.
I think Jackie's back there nodding her head, yes, in agreement.
Okay, yeah, I just got a thumbs up from Jackie, so yes.
Great.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council?
No.
That is it. Entertain a motion if there's none.
I move to approve the purchase agreement with Liberty Draw Farm Ground LLC for property described on the attached document in the amount of $16,850 plus closing costs, and to authorize the mayor to sign the purchase agreement and the interim city manager to sign all subsequent closing documents to complete the transaction.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second to approve the purchase agreement with Liberty Draw Farm Ground LLC for property described on the attached documents in the amount of $16,850 plus closing costs, and authorize the mayor to sign the purchase agreement and the interim city manager to sign all subsequent closing documents to complete the transaction. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on. Item number 10, consideration of 31st Street Storm Sewer Construction Contract. Staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, as you recall, late this summer, Council gave staff direction to proceed with the 31st Street Storm Sewer Improvements Project, along with the portion of the 35th Street project that's underneath the Union Pacific Railroad. So staff is back tonight with that contract, construction contract to complete the 31st Street project. Mark has been busy working with the contractors on the final details. That contract is in your packet. He's here to describe it a little further for you.
Thank you, Randy. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. So on this project, as you recall, back when we originally started this, we went through, we're doing a CMAR, a construction manager at risk process, but we also brought in a third-party cost estimator to help us true the cost when we got the original cost estimate from BT Construction back in June of last year. So during that reconciliation process, and it's noted in the staff memo, we reconciled the two costs to be within 1% of each other, with BT's cost coming in at about $2,475,321. And that cost is their cost. It's not, doesn't account for what you would normally see in a construction bid, their markups, and also this is one of the nice things about this, you see the transparency. So they've actually given us their markup plus the cost, because when you bid a project, you have to provide a bond. And when you buy, you have to buy that bond. So the contractor's not giving us that for free. So that's usually included in the overall cost of the project. So when we had the project last year, the cost of the actual work was $2,475,321. The cost this year, and I'm going to bring up my other page here, was $2,900,365, or about 17% higher than it was about 18 months ago. And considering the fact that diesel's gone up 50% in the last year or plus, labor's gone up almost 7.5%, precast concrete products 18%, and the construction equipment rental 8.7%. 17% is not a bad markup over 18 months, in my opinion. So that's just the cost itself. And then obviously, when you take that cost and add in their profit markup and the percentage for the bonding, that's where we come up with the construction contract cost of, got to come back to my other sheet here. $3,445,515. As you, just so you know, we are into the railroad right now to get the final blessing to actually start the work in the railroad right away. They sent us comments about 3 weeks ago, which we responded to in about 24 hours. And I've been bugging them every Monday since we got back to them to find out if they've blessed it or not, because we're hoping to get under construction pending contract approval in January. So we can knock, and then I actually got a call from Greeley Storage today wondering why we weren't already starting construction. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Neal, any questions or comments for staff?
No, let's get her done. We need to get it done.
Any other additional questions or comments for staff? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Sounds good to me.
I move to award the East Side Storm Sewer 31st Street Storm Sewer Project contract to BT Construction in the amount of $3,445,515 with contingency to be used only with city manager approval for a not to exceed amount of $3,790,000.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to award the East Side Street Storm Sewer Construction Contract sewer project to BT Constructions in the amount of $3,445,515 with a contingency to be used only with city manager approval for not to exceed amount of $3,790,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item number 11, back to public hearings. Consideration of ordinance number 790-22, amending the 2022 budget first reading. I will open up the public hearing and hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this first item is first of three. They're budget-related items. This one will conclude your 2022 budget actions. This is for the final budget revision of the year. We did present this to you in the last work session. Jackie's here to respond to any questions and any other issues that may have come up since that work session.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Clark, members of City Council. Thank you, Mr. Reedy. The budget revision request does remain unchanged from the information presented at work session on November 15th. There are just 4 items requesting new appropriation. The work session, your agenda report does also list out the items that we intend to proceed on if we haven't already. Given council direction of the list of items, we'll use salary savings to complete, which made this a very short budget revision request for this year, which is always really nice. Your packet also includes the long-range plans for the affected funds and the ordinance to appropriate those expenditures and increase the revenue in that refuse fund. Because we've gone through it in significant detail, I'll spare reading through it again, but would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you.
I do have a question. When it comes to the discretionary funds that we have within the city, how would that work? Because I know collectively we've used them for specific things that we feel are, that we should, donate to, for example. But are those, I know we've talked in the past in regards to utilizing individually as well. How does that look? And are we able to then utilize that amount? Because I know it's X amount per council person, and collectively it's 21,000. And so I was just curious on how that would work. Just because I don't think we've ever had like a discussion on that. Like, do we have to collectively use it? Can it be individually used? What's the jurisdiction that we, I guess, or how can we, are we able to say, hey, I'm using my portion for this? I'm just curious.
We've had that discussion
I know we brought it up, but I don't think I've ever understood it exactly on how that looks.
Sure, and that is an annual appropriation included in your ongoing every year annual budget. There's that 21,000. It was in 2022's budget. It is also in the 23 budget that council's approved. And as Councilwoman Spear indicates, historically it's been a conversation amongst council members to identify needs or allocate that funding for whatever council decides to use those funds towards. I do recall in the past few years, as Heritage Days has grown in size, multi-day event. That was one of the factors that council had looked at, potentially using that additional budget for, in addition to the $20,000 of Heritage Day budget. But there hasn't been an allocation identified for it for 2023. Likely something that should be discussed by council and looked at for how you
I guess
like to
I'm
use
just
those funds
curious
next
on,
year.
does it have to always be a collective use, or can it be individually? If like any given council member individually would decide to use it for something other?
I don't believe that there are specifications
Or specifications of any
guiding
sort?
whether or not that has to be used
Okay.
all for one purpose or individually, unless somebody else has some historical knowledge. I don't believe that there's regulations written.
Yeah, I guess I could briefly comment on that. The bottom line is that it's called discretionary funds, but it all has to be spent for a public purpose. So it's not completely discretionary. And then also the decision of whether to say, each council member has this much to spend in their discretion, that would have to be a collective decision of the council. But if you wanted to say, as a council, we want to authorize each individual council member to spend X number of dollars, you could do that. And those expenditures, again, would just have to be for a public purpose. Generally, the decision to spend public money is done, it would be unusual to give individual council members a large amount of money to spend in their own individual discretion. Usually it's a council decision.
And the discussion was around the Bright Futures is
Yeah,
when
I
it was.
remember.
And
Because I remember you mentioned, you had
Can we
asked
get-
if, can I provide?
Well, we had, another council member had, at that time, brought up the individuals and that we had talked a little bit about it. For example, like if I wanted to use my 3,000 to help with the Humane Society.
Right.
Because I know that the city has to pay the Humane Society for having animals. But anyways, that was the specific conversation that was revolved around that. Was at the time that there was Bright Futures, because we had felt that the county was at that time on the verge of making it profitable enough that they did not need our discretionary $21,000. That's what we had used it on, so.
I was just curious, kind of understanding exactly how that worked, because I don't think, at least I've never heard a discussion on what that all looked like, and I appreciate what you just mentioned. Thank you.
Councilmember Neal, do you have any questions of staff? Oh, it looks like he's disappeared. Oh,
There he is.
No.
okay. Any other additional questions of staff?
No. The camera doesn't move with you.
All right.
I know.
Since this is a public hearing, I would ask anybody in the audience that wishes to come up and speak for or against this to come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain any council discussion or a motion.
I think we beat this one to death.
Yes, agree.
I move to adopt ordinance number 790-22 on first reading.
Second.
Motion a second to adopt ordinance number 790-22 on first reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, item number 12, consideration of resolution number 45-2022 regarding approval of the 2023 fee schedule. And we'll hear from staff.
Yes, this is the first of two items that will complete your adoption of the 2023 budget. What's before you now is the 2023 fee schedule. A few years ago, Finance Department started doing this process. Has been enormously helpful, not only internally for staff, but also to our customers. It's one-stop shopping for all the fees in the city, for anything from renting a room to getting a building permit, and all of our impact fees and water and sewer fees, et cetera, all in one place. So this was reviewed, the fees related to water and sewer and stormwater, reviewed by the Water and Sewer Board at their October 20th meeting, and we brought all of these fees back to you at your 11:15 work session. So Jackie is here for final consideration of the fee schedule for your adoption this evening.
Great, thank you.
Thank you again. I will note the one area of this fee schedule that we have not discussed relates to the administrative fees. So everything from business licensing to recreation fees are included in that administrative section. We do have 3 items that were of most significance in those changes for 2023 that I did want to mention. One was including the oil and gas location assessment application fee that was approved late last year. So that's included in the final original fee schedule for this next year. Facility rental fees are increasing due to supply costs and increasing costs of staffing. So those fees differ depending on the size of the room and the length of the rental, but all of those are increasing. And we also have inclusion of several new liquor license and occupational fees that are state mandated that we needed to bring into our fee schedule for agreement of those fees. Otherwise, all these fees are reviewed as we complete our budget process, so starting in the summer, and the budget that you have approved for 2023 is built on the assumptions of these revenue amounts in the fee schedule. That concludes staff comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Neal, do you have any questions or comments for staff?
No, Jackie does a good job there on explaining everything.
Any other additional questions, comments from council?
I have none.
If not, I would entertain a motion. Pretty straightforward to me.
I move to approve resolution number 45-2022 to adopt the 2023 fee schedule.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 45-2022 to adopt the 2023 fee schedule. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda, consideration of resolution number 47-2022, establishing the 2023 property tax levy. And we'll hear from staff.
And this is the final budget item that we'd ask for you to approve this year for the 2023 budget. It would set the property tax levy, establishing it at the same level that it currently is. I'll let Jackie provide any other detail.
Thank you again. As Mr. Reedy indicated, your mill levy remains at 3.536, which is a consistent level as required by Weld County. After council's approval tonight of this resolution, I will certify that amount with Weld County prior to the December 15th deadline. And this does set the budget for property tax next year at just shy of $840,000. That's about 8% increase over this year's property tax budget of $780,000, just for reference. But the mill levy does remain unchanged, and we'll certify after tonight. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Councilmember Neal, any questions, comments?
Well, I guess we could go really brave and raise it really, really high. No.
Good.
Okay.
Any other additional questions or comments?
I'm just glad to see something not being raised.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
I move to adopt resolution number 47-2022. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 47-2022. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
All right, next item on the agenda, back to public hearings. Consideration of continuance of ordinance number 791-23 for the change of zone request for a property at the northwest corner of 23rd Avenue and 42nd Street, Prairie View Drive, from December 6, 2022 to January 17, 2023. I will open up the public hearing and we will hear from staff, please.
Mayor and council, we are asking for your consideration of continuing this item till the January 17th meeting. There has been a change in the applicant, and there was also a snafu with the Greeley Tribune in terms of the publication. So we do need to post it correctly, give proper notice, and allow the new applicant to fully comply with all of the application requirements. So we are requesting your continuance to January 17th.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions of staff? Councilmember Neal?
I do have.
Yes, I take it somebody else bought the property in between.
Actually, no, there was a contract that did fall through, so that the current owner, Landings Development, has decided to continue with the application on their part.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Mortensen?
Just quick question. Is this gonna be enough time for them? Roughly 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks?
It is, the
Okay.
the major issue was that the Greeley Tribune accidentally pulled this from publication. It would have been ready to go tonight, but whoops.
Okay, I just wanna make sure we give them enough time, cause we've had some others that, you know.
Right.
Yes. So,
Yep, it
thank
would
you.
have been ready for tonight.
Okay, thank you.
All right, because it's a public hearing, anybody in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item, please come up to the podium. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain any comments or a motion. Is that your comment, Councilmember Neal?
I move to approve the request for a continuance of the public hearing on ordinance number 791-23 regarding a change of zone application for property located at the northwest corner of 23rd Avenue and 42nd Street to January 17th, 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve the request for a continuance of a public hearing on ordinance number 791-23 regarding the change of zone application for property located at the northwest corner of 23rd Avenue and 42nd Street to January 17, 2023. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, reports. City manager, please.
I have nothing in addition to my thanks to you for working with us, your patience and diligence through all 14 of these agenda items after a pretty intense 2-hour work session. So thank you for hanging in and for allowing us to get through a lot of information tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. City attorney.
Nothing further.
All right. Next item on the agenda, audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address City Council on any item? Please come forward.
For the record, my name is Steve Teets. I'm in Greeley. I just want to say is that at your work session that the Councilwoman Johnson said about, you can build, but yet don't have transportation and accessibility and mobility and affordable housing along with that. So, and then that goes with the Greeley Evans Transit and it just, by now we should have for Greeley and Evans, especially Evans, to have so your residents can get around. You don't have a bus route past 23rd Avenue. And by now we should have, and also a good regional would, because population has expanded, ballooned, whatever you want to call it. Also with the shortness of housing as well as, which we need housing first, and transportation, it affects employment as well. And also too, you were talking about the plat on 31st Street and by 85, that big wide open, that it would be nice if we could have affordable housing, if it's apartments or maybe houses, but probably apartments would make more sense. Just my input on that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address City Council on any item? Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
So it's not fell through, why don't you try that quarter line? Because it's half the price. That was fine for us when we originally.
No?
Again, half the price, they only wanted 765,000 for that 70.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and you